Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Go ahead. We good? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:19, Thursday, September 14th, 2023. Roll call, please. Papua.
Here.
Trustee Rudolph.
Here.
Trustee Brown.
Here.
Trustee Cabanero.
Here.
Trustee Abiana here. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to remind everyone of our mission and vision statements to engage, educate, and empower the Bayshore community, growing engaged hearts, educated minds, and empowered visionaries. All right. I'd like to entertain a motion and a second for the approval of the agenda.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Public comment. The board receives communication from the public regarding agenda items on non-agenda items. If you would like to address the board, you will need to complete a yellow form and turn it to the district representative prior to the start of the meeting. Under Government Code 54954.3, members of the public have the right to address the board on any matter within the board's jurisdiction. However, the board cannot act on non-agenda items and cannot respond to issues other than to provide general information. Individual speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board. The board shall limit the total time for the public discussion of any one matter to 20 minutes. All right, I'd like to open public comment. Trustee Rudolph, are there any public comments?
Yes, we have two public comment submittals, and I'd like to first invite Sarah Gamora.
I hope you don't mind that I've prepared a statement to read. As you know, public speaking for teachers can be a little challenging. My name is Sarah Gamara, and I am the president of Bayshore Teachers Association, or BTA for short. I'm here to share some facts about the recent hiring process for a long-term substitute for kindergarten. One kindergarten teacher is going on maternity leave after tomorrow, September 15th. She notified the district in April, about 5 months before her leave, and again in July, about 2 months ahead. The district has had a general substitute posting on EdJoin since November and reposted it in July, but has not specifically advertised for a long-term substitute. There have been no hires for this posting, and no personal searches elsewhere produced interested candidates. On August 22nd, during the second week of school and 24 days before her leave, the kindergarten teacher asked whether a long-term sub had been found, as there had been no communication from administration. In response, a meeting was scheduled for September 5th, 10 calendar days ahead of her leave, to discuss a plan that had been developed by the administrative team without input from kindergarten teaching team until that point. It was the stated opinion of the administrative team that this meeting was occurring in a proactive stage of planning. The district's current plan is to combine the two separately established classes into one roster of 27 students and assign both kindergarten teachers to it as co-teachers for the remainder of the year. There will be one general classroom aide and one aide who is specifically assigned to a student with an IEP, but who may also help the class at large. So while one teacher is on leave, the remaining teacher will manage 27 students and 2 other adults. Article 9.10.1 in BTA's collective bargaining agreement states, the standard rate of compensation for unit members substituting for another teacher for any part of the day, including taking another teacher's students, when a regular substitute is not available, will be equal to $50 per hour in addition to the member's regular salary. The district has not offered for her to be compensated for handling the combined duties of 2 teachers because they believe she is not substituting. Upon the first teacher's return from maternity leave near the beginning of February, both teachers would continue to co-teach the full roster of kindergarten students and would not return to the smaller class sizes established in the beginning of the school year. There is no cost savings to the district to maintain a single large class with 2 teachers as compared to 2 separate small classes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I would like to invite Daphne Flores.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Daphne Flores, and I am the Vice President of the Bayshore Teachers Association. I have some more facts about teacher hiring that are of interest to union members. In general, this year, the district needed to hire for 3 elementary teacher positions and 3 middle school teacher positions. Teacher hiring this year was not completed until August, while hiring in the past has occurred in April, May, and June, with some exceptions. Multiple teachers received personal communication over the summer informing them of a possibility of needing to teach combination classes or other grade levels due to uncertainty in filling these open positions. Specifically for special education hiring, last school year, the district had 3 education specialists and 1 teacher for the special day class, now Accessible Education Classroom or AEC. Currently, the district has 1 part-time education specialist and 1 accessible education teacher. Because of this reduction in staff, the part-time education specialist who is managing general education students with IEPs has a full caseload and cannot take on newly identified students with educational needs unless the students are reassigned to another case manager. There has been a posting for a full-time education specialist on EdJoin since May, and there has been at least 1 interview. Additionally, the district has been unable to hire a speech and language pathologist and has contracted with an outside organization to provide services to students virtually. To manage students receiving speech virtually, the district has made an offer of employment to a new paraeducator, and now they plan to take down the special education specialist job posting. Thank you for your time.
Trustee Rudolph, are there any more?
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gamara. Thank you, Ms. Flores, for speaking tonight. All right. Moving on to the next item. Item 4, consent items. Are there any items that anyone would like to remove from consent items? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion in a second.
Motion. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Moving on to item 5, educational services. Public hearing, sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials, Education Code 60119 and 5 CCR 9531 require that the governing board hold an annual public education or hearing regarding the sufficiency of instructional materials or instructional materials and determine through a resolution whether each student has sufficient textbooks or instructional materials. Sufficient textbooks or instructional materials are defined in Education Code 60119, means that each student in the district, including each English learner, has standards aligned textbook, or instructional materials, or both, to use in the classroom or take home. This law does require 2 sets of textbooks or instructional materials for each student. As amended in AB 2211, Chapter 254, Statuses of 2010, Education Code 6119 provides that sufficient textbooks or instructional materials may include materials in digital format under specified conditions. I'd like to open public hearing at 6:29. Do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments regarding.
Okay, I'd like to close public hearing at 6:30. And we'll move to item 5B, adoption resolution 23-01, sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials. To approve resolution 23-01 on sufficiency textbooks and instructional materials. If any of my fellow trustees have any questions, if not, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Motion to approve resolution 2301.
Second.
All in favor, please
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Okay, item 6, business and physical services. 6A. I'd like to turn this over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dyson, if you could display the unaudited actuals report, please. Okay, so this is our unaudited actuals report. You received a lengthy document as an attachment reviewing all of this information. So this is more of a summary of what that document showed. And it was prepared for us by our CBO consultant, Benita Singh, who's an incredible member of our business team. Okay, so the second slide is going to talk about what these are. So unaudited actuals are the financial reports represented in the financial position and results of operations of the school district for the fiscal year 22-23. And this data has not been formally audited by the independent auditor. So if you remember at the end of last year in June, we had a budget review with a projected budget for 23-24, and that was based on the information that we had at the time with regards to 22-23. So this is taking into consideration what the governor's budget was, the May revise, and where we stand based on any information that changed over the summer. So the unaudited actuals are presented to the board each September, and then the board is reviewed by an independent auditor, and we must submit that report to the board by December 15th. So we'll be revisiting some information later this year. The next slide shows the timeline of the process for every time we're doing a fiscal reporting cycle. So first interim, the period goes from July to December of a calendar year. And then we have the governor's proposed budget that we review in January. And then we have second interim that goes from July to, so it should be March, July 1 to January 1. And then we have the governor's May revise, which was very vague this year. And so we made some projections. And so you'll see that some of our projections were right on. And then some of our projections were different because of hiring and other things that ended up happening over the summer. Then we have an estimated actuals and budget adoption in June, which is what the most recent conversation was, as I mentioned. And then we have the unaudited actuals in September. So here we are in September. We'll go to first interim in December for our next budget report. So what do our unaudited actuals show? And the next slide, we're going to look at the general fund revenues. And this is a pie chart that shows where our revenues come from. So that includes the LCFF resources that we receive, the federal revenues, the state revenues, and the local revenues. And that's broken down more specifically in the report, but you'll see that a majority of our funding comes from the state. The next slide, you're going to see how those general fund expenditures are spent. And what is very typical is that you have a majority of the budget of that particular funding source spent on employees. So you'll see that the 40% are certificated salaries, then we have 14% classified salaries, and on, and continuing. So it's benefits, it's books and supplies, it's capital outlay, and other interfund transfers that happen to balance out different accounts. The next slide is a general overview of some highlights that that you'll see as an explanation of some of the shifts that you'll see on the multi-year report coming up on the next slide. But what we had in terms of revenues, the state increased some revenues by $570,000 due to a kitchen infrastructure and training grant that we got. We also received our Community Schools Partnership Planning Grant, and the state continued funding for the arts, music, instructional materials, learning recovery, emergency block grants, et cetera. So those were all funds that we talked about in June. Not sure exactly how much was going to be funded by the state, but that picture became clearer over the summer. Our local revenues increased by $173,000, and that comes from parcel taxes, general interest, and local grants. And the expenditures, a majority came below the second interim projection. So the second interim projection took into account how we would end the year and start this year. And so some of that change came from the fact that we had some natural attrition in staffing. We had others leave, and people who came on, so the staffing who came on were at a different cost. And then the ending fund balance, increased by 1.36 million compared to the estimated actuals, mostly due to restricted revenues. So now restricted revenues have a very specific spending focus. These are not revenues that are spent on salary, but rather some of the examples that were in the previous bullet are kitchen infrastructure, the arts, music, and instructional materials, and community schools partnership. And there was also a savings projected in expenditures for special education. Ms. Flores mentioned our challenge in hiring an ed specialist and a speech therapist, even though we are spending funding to contract with an outside resource. We have not been successful in hiring an educational specialist. So that is also something that has impacted our expenditures. And then we anticipated needing to support a couple of students with significant identified cognitive needs, and those requirements haven't happened yet. So we're still holding on to that expense because we're not sure exactly how that's going to plan out, but it hasn't been expended yet. In the next slide is our a comparison from the 22-23 budget, and it shows first interim spending, second interim spending, and where the unaudited actuals are now. So what you'll see is that ending fund balance increase that I mentioned in the highlights, and some of the reasons for the difference in projection that we had. And then in the next slide, these are all the funding. So whereas in the first slide, it was a comparison of the different interim projections. This one includes all of the funds that are spent. So that includes the federal, it includes salaries, etc. And next steps for moving forward. The next slide. Thank you, Mr. Dyson. It's a positive outlook. The economy, which is currently driving the budget trajectory, is showing signs of resilience, where the outlook in the spring was less positive. Some economists predict that the recession may actually be averted, whereas that was a real concern back in May. Inflation is finally abating and the labor market is remaining strong. And all of those things impact the state budget, which then impacts what we receive. So the forecast for 24 is hazy due to uncertainty regarding final tax receipts in October. So if you remember, the tax filing date was extended from April to October. And so that information and how it impacts our budget is still to be determined. The state did fully fund the 8.22% COLA. And so it maintained core programs and reduced cuts to one-time block grants. So the money we were thinking of initially for the arts and music and instructional materials grant and learning recovery was reduced, but not by as much as what was initially shared. And then we have Proposition 28. So approximately $938 million has been appropriated for the state, and we get a very small chunk of that. But we're looking forward to receiving those fundings and putting it towards the purpose they're intended for. Any questions?
Great. Any trustees have any questions pertaining to the unaudited actual financial report for 23-24 or 22-23? I'm sorry. I want to thank you for your presentation, Superintendent Veal.
Thank you.
And we'll move to entertain a motion and a second to approve the unaudited financial report for 22-23.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. We'll move to item 6B, adoption resolution 23-02 to adopt the GAN limit. And I'll hand this back over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, so I'm just going to read the summary that I put in the agenda. So by the 30th of September of each year, Ed Code Section 1629 and 41-132 specify that each year the county office and district governing board shall adopt a resolution identifying their estimated appropriations limits for the current and actual appropriation limit for the preceding year. The documentation supporting the adoption resolution shall be made available to the public. It's not necessary to submit a copy of the board resolution to the CDE, but we do find that our district is in need of increasing its limit. If we do find that our district is in need of increasing its limitations, then we should notify the Director of Finance. Our Director of Finance. There is not an increase, so we don't have to do that. And so the adopted resolution is being recommended to approve.
Okay. If any fellow trustees have any questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion in a second to adopt the 2302 adoption GAN limit.
A motion to approve resolution 2302.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Moving on to item 6C, EPA spending report. I'll hand this back over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, thank you. So in June, we discussed and you reviewed the EPA spending in fiscal year 22-23. And the report that was attached to the agenda was an update on that information. And so you approved the report that was shared in June of the last school year, and this is just the update. Are there any questions?
No questions. Thank you for sharing that information. We'll move on to item 6D. Approve the consolidated application for 23-24, and I'll hand this back over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, so the Con app, as it's lovingly referred to by our business team, is the consolidated application for funding for categorical aid programs, and it must be completed to apply for funding for the following federal and state programs. So that's our Title I monies, the improving the academic achievement of the disadvantaged monies, which is what Title I is. Title II, which is centers around teacher and principal training and recruitment, and Title III, which is the program for limited English proficient students, those identified as such. So these are funding sources that we utilize, and so it's important to approve these applications that were attached.
Great. Any trustees have any questions? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion and a second to approve the consolidated application for 23-24.
Motion to approve consolidated application for 23-24.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There's unanimous. All right, moving on to item 6E, first read, Board Policy 6158. I'll hand this back over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, so attached in your agenda are three items for your consideration, and they are all centered around information about Board Policy and Administrative Regulation 6158, which is independent study. So it's important that we update our current board policy because there have been some changes in new laws enacted, and we need those to be reflected in our board policy and the administrative reg. So this is our first read of this information. In the October meeting, we'll make a vote for what the updates will be. So this is the first process of reviewing. I will make my recommendations, and you can take that into consideration. And then between now and next month, when we come back for the discussion, that's when we would be approving any changes that you would like to make. So in the description, I mentioned that, and let me just pull this up. So in order to generate apportionment for independent study, all LEAs must have adopted and implemented board policy and written agreements that meet specific criteria. AB 130 added new elements to be included in board policies. And so that's what we want to make sure that our board policy and our administrative regulations reflect. So there are some recommendations here in the summary that highlight what was added as a result of AB 130. The attachment, we have one attachment, which is our current board policy and our current administrative reg. Another attachment is the CSBA recommended updated policy for 6158. And that recommendation covers K-12. So, excuse me, that recommendation from CSBA covers K-12. The recommendation I have is that we adopt a policy that reflects our population, and so that's pre-K through 8th grade. And so what I did was attach a neighboring district's board policy that does just this, and they already went through their updating policy. So it's for your consideration to see how they amended their policy to reflect their K-8 or pre-K-8 population. And I'm recommending we do the same. So more specifically, in the CSBA regulation, there's a section that is targeted for studies in high school. I don't think we need that because we are not a high school district. And so it doesn't, we don't need to have our policy reflect that particular aspect of it. But the CSBA manual example is very thorough and does reflect the changes that AB 130 did institute. So I'll open it up to any questions that you have about my recommendation or the information that you were given to review.
Do any trustees have any questions with regards to the first read board policy 6158?
No, I'm glad that we're able to do this pertaining to the changes that we have. So thank you for looking into that.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much, Superintendent Veal.
Okay.
And moving on to item 7, school reports.
Oh, this is going fast.
We have a special guest here tonight who's going to share a presentation with the Community Schools Grant presentation, Chris Carroll. Mind taking the podium? Thank you.
Good evening, President Abiyana and Bayshore trustees. I am Chris Carroll, the new community school coordinator. Thank you for letting me come and speak to you tonight and share some information about the community schools framework and the focus of the work that we'll be doing over the next 2 years. So a little bit about myself. I've spent the past 30 years working with youth and families, youth from birth through age 22. I've worked in residential treatment facilities, in homes, one-on-one with students, public education, non-public education, you name the environment. I've probably worked in it with students. I have a master's in social work, and my focus over the last 10 or so years has been in public education as a district behavior intervention specialist, as well as a district and county administrator. So some of my passions that align with this framework are focusing on student and staff empowerment and school climate and culture work. So what is a community school? Here's the basic definition from the California framework. Different frameworks have a variation of this definition, but this is the one from the California Department of Education. But what I'd like you to imagine is an environment where everyone loves to learn, they feel safe, connected, respected, and valued. In this place, adults and young people, teachers and families, and the school and community are partners in decision-making and promoting change. This is a community school. It's both a place and a set of partnerships that serve as a holistic improvement strategy for organizing, mobilizing, and integrating school and community resources and family and community involvement to address systemic barriers to and promote opportunities for learning and growth. So really the goal is improve student access to learning and stronger families and communities whose unique needs and aspirations are uplifted. This framework is designed to intentionally and collaboratively address the economic and social barriers that are the underlying cause of existing opportunity and achievement gaps. So you'll see in this video that it's a short video that I'm going to play, that this isn't something additional that we're doing. This is a way to boost the impact of the services and things that the teachers are already providing. No, that's not going to work. Maybe I won't play a video. Okay.
So one of the things I was going to share after the video is that this model has been around, but the resurgence in looking at community schools came after the pandemic when we started noticing the achievement gaps that were emerging in students. Governor Newsom, excuse me, has allocated approximately $4 billion through the California Community Schools Participation Program Grant, or the CCSPP, which is what Bayshore is a part of, towards implementation of this framework. This is the first statewide initiative to ever provide funding for California schools. And over the last 2 years, there have been approximately 418 schools, districts, or community or county offices that are taking part in this grant. So it's gaining speed. So we'll play this to give just a highlight. Nope.
Caring for the whole child. Working together to realize a shared vision. This is the school every student needs. This is a community school. Community schools are public schools that partner with stakeholders to create the conditions students need to thrive. Community schools can be found across the United States, and their numbers are growing fast. But what exactly makes a school a community school? They integrate student supports. Clinics, counselors, and other services ensure each and every student is ready to learn. They expand and enrich learning. Extended school days, summer programs, and real-world experiences help students reach their full potential. They engage families and communities. Partnering with residents to identify and meet community needs makes everyone feel safe, welcome, and involved in school. They lead in collaboration. Inclusive decision-making and peer learning builds trust among students, educators, families, and communities. When a school stands on these 4 pillars, it's a community school. Research supports this 4-pillar approach, but there's no one-size-fits-all model. Every community school is different because each community is different. Figuring out what it looks like in your community starts by getting actual community members involved. That's the full-time job of community school coordinators. They're the human bridge connecting all the partners and stakeholders that make community schools possible. So that's what makes a school a community school.
So that's just a brief highlight of what community schools are and can be. Am I back on? Oh, here we go. Nope, now it wants to play again. There we go. Thanks, Mr. Dyson. So community schools are, the foundation is these 4 pillars. So the first being integrated support services, excuse me. This is where we take into account the whole child approach, where the community school pays attention to all aspects of a student's development while providing a range of on-site services and supports to overcome the barriers to academic and life challenges. The second is extended learning. These are essential to supporting students' academic growth, as well as to help them develop socially, economically, and physically. It includes participation in new experiences, both after school, embedded in the school day, summer programming, as well as at times student voice in the electives that they're taking. The third pillar is family and community engagement. This is vital to fostering trusting and respectful relationships, which is the key to a community school. The community voice is essential. Building capacity of all stakeholders, creating empowered decision-making processes, and leveraging local resources and expertise all fall within this pillar. And the fourth pillar is collaborative leadership. This is really the relational glue that holds all the other pillars together and connects them. It's critical for the success of the strategy, and it's a method of leveraging the collective expertise of all of the stakeholders. So again, being able to give voice and leadership to students, to families, to communities, as well as the staff, to build the environment that we see the students will benefit from. So why community schools? Here you'll see a list of some of the things that, some of the benefits to having a community school. But in addition to this, principals and teachers will have more time for quality instruction because the school's community partners are there to help address some of the non-academic barriers that students are facing. Families will also have more opportunities to share their voice and to contribute to the community because those same barriers are being addressed in other ways. So how are we going to begin this process? As I mentioned, this is possible because of the grant that we have received from the state. So over the next 2 years, we will work on the visioning phase, which begins with sharing information about the community schools framework with all of the stakeholders, as I'm doing tonight, as well as sharing the vital role that each of these stakeholders plays as part of the community school. This involves building an advisory team, which we are in the process of doing, asset mapping, so looking at the resources that are already coming into the school and seeing, what they're addressing, a needs assessment, looking at what are the hopes and the dreams and the needs that the community has, and then a gap analysis. With all those other pieces, where are the areas where there are still gaps and barriers for the students, and what services can we bring in to address those? So then we'll build into the engaging phase in these 2 years, and this is based on all the data collection that we completed in this first visioning. In this phase, we'll develop the plan to build the capacity and infrastructure that's necessary to address the gaps that we discovered and to remove the identified barriers to student success. Beginning in the 3rd year is when the implementation of the plan starts, and that's a secondary grant that we'll apply for. That phase will involve continual self-reflection of the system. So this isn't something that we do one assessment and it's done. We will continually be assessing the needs and barriers that students are facing. We'll look at the progress that we made, the areas where we still need to grow, and the gaps in the system that remain or that have emerged over time, because new gaps may show. Lastly, I want to thank you for taking the time to hear about this and for giving me the opportunity actually to be a part of this team. I'm really excited about it. So I open it up to you for any questions.
Trustees have any questions?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I do. Thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
I'm looking at the, over the next 2 to 3 years, but going down to the engaging stage, as far as an advisory team,
Yes.
where are you looking to find those individuals or community members, or where are you going to find your advisory?
So the advisory team will be made up of teachers, both classified and certificated, parents, community members, Ms. Veal, Ms. McZee, myself. And what's really important about that advisory team is that the members reflect the different components that are supporting the school. So having people that can give voice to what community needs might be out there, having people give voice to the supports that are already here and whether they're working for the students as, the current population of students that we have or not. And so that we're just in the very beginning processes of that and looking at, okay, who are the positions that we would like to have, and then we'll reach out to folks if there may be people that say, hey, I'd like to be on that team, and that's great. So part of the outreach that I'm doing, I've been up at the community center as well. I plan to go to a PTO meeting But it's vital to have parents and community members on this team.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. Any other trustees have any questions,
Oh,
comments?
I did.
Go ahead.
So from the 4 pillars that you stated, or it's already there, and I know this has already been in Bayshore. We kind of like have, our feet, just 1 foot in the water. But when you're joining the team, where do you think we're at right now, since we already have this? And how soon can we speed up the process of this, or where exactly we're at the map right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like Bayshore has, as you mentioned, a lot of services, right? There's more services than than a lot of schools that I've seen, which is great.
Like,
3 mental health counselors, a full-time school counselor, a behaviorist that works with the school. Not many schools have that much social emotional support, especially for the number of students that are here at the school. And so part of I don't want to rush the process, because part of what's important in this is aligning those services to make sure that we're actually addressing the needs for the students, that we're not saying, okay, here's a service, let's just put it in because it's a great service, that it's actually addressing the needs that have been identified by students, that have been identified by staff, that have been identified by families and community, so that we're in a pointed direction, making this a better and more enriched environment. I feel like Bayshore is definitely, moving in the right direction. You guys have all the right things. It's just a matter of aligning it, making sure we're targeting the right things. The other piece of that is really information. I'm not, I'm still in the information gathering portion of my history here as well, right? People don't know me. I'm not really sure how much information the staff have about what is a community school. And what role they'd like to play in it. And so that's part of, people getting to know me and having conversations about it. So I hesitate to rush through it, because we do have the 2 years to do it. And that doesn't mean that the services that we have will stop. The kids will still continue to receive the services, that we have here. So.
but how many stakeholders you already have contacts with so far since you came on board?
As far as the advisory team, or just in general?
In general.
I've been trying to get into every classroom for the morning circles. I believe I have.
No, outside from this school.
Oh, outside from the school. I've been to one of the community meetings up at the Friendship Club, I believe it's called, up at the community center. And so I've outreached there. I have touched base with the PTO to go to their first meeting, which I believe is on September 18th. And so I will hopefully be able to make some more touch points there. I did speak at the back to school night to the parents. And so, gave a very quick overview of what community schools are there. But part of it is, the more information I can gather about who are those key players in the community, then my intention is to reach out to them as well.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? I look forward to the work that's going to be done over time, until we get to the phase of the implementation grant. But, we've been talking about this for quite some time, and finally, we've got it. You're here, and that's a huge leap. I think the school, what we have here is tremendous, great people, staff members, students, of course. And I think the biggest component that we've been lacking is parent engagement. And I'm glad to see that we have a parent PTO representative here tonight. And it's encouraging to see where we're moving towards, So I think we have a lot of it already established, but it's a matter of gathering all that data over time, and everyone coming together. and I'm excited. I'm excited to see the staff involved. I'm excited to see the students and how they're going to receive all this affection and love and support, and especially the families. I think what we need to do better is get that information out to the community, because a lot of people still are trying to understand what is a community schools. It's all over advertisements, it's on the commercials, it's everywhere, but everyone's trying to figure out how does it benefit me as a family. So, but I appreciate your presentation. I look forward to hearing more information as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the process of putting together a flyer to send out to the community, as well as, having some touch points for them as well, through that, the block party, things like that.
Great. Thank you. One more question for you. The block party is coming up. Will you have a table set up?
I've talked to the PTO about joining them, because I think it's important to see that alignment, right?
Sure.
That we're all working together. I'm not just this separate entity that's sitting at a table by myself. And I think that will also help people to not be as hesitant to approach me.
Great.
Because I'm sitting next to connected members in the community.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your presentation tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Moving on to 7B, school reports enrollment update. I'll hand this over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dyson, if you could put the first slide of my report up. Thank you. So here is our current cumulative enrollment information as of yesterday. So this is a report that Ms. Bowman pulled for me. And so I'm just highlighting enrollment and then what some of our population looks like. Normally in our total, we wouldn't include pre-K, but we are being very intentional because it's a state-run program, but because we're doing a pilot with pre-K, TK, I wanted to include the numbers because it's important to recognize the totality of our community. So we have 17 pre-K students, and that is both the AM and the PM numbers combined. And then you'll see TK through 8th grade. And you'll see that some of our grade levels are smaller. I'll point out that kindergarten, as of yesterday, had 26 students enrolled. And we also have equally small number in 5th grade with 26. The other classrooms, except for 3rd grade, where we're around 15, 16 students in each class, other classrooms are around 18 to 20 or 22 students. So very nice small class sizes. Within our population, we have 24, just under a quarter of our population are identified language learners. Of our total population, a third of our school are actually IDT students. And so those are inter-district transfers. They come from a variety of other districts for whatever reason. We have a majority of our students coming from San Francisco, and that more has to do with proximity because we are so close to San Francisco, but we do have students coming to us from Brisbane, Jefferson Elementary, South City, San Bruno, and even in East Bay. So a good portion of our students are IDTs. Of our population, 40 students or 11% of our population have identified needs, whether that be in academics, speech and language, or another area of qualifying criteria. And I want to point out that 14 of our 40 students are IDTs. And this is important because of some of the information that was shared at the beginning in public comment. So almost, a third of our students are the responsibility of other districts. And so we have absorbed meeting the students' needs, which comes at a cost. And so as we're, continually looking at our budget and how we're serving students, that is something important to keep in mind. We also have close to half of our population who are identified as receiving or qualifying for free and reduced lunch, which is a socioeconomic marker. So you can see that we are growing a little bit from our numbers from last year. We have great diversity in both culture and need, and we'll continue to work on bringing more people into our community.
All right, thank you. Any trustees have questions or comments on the enrollment update?
I just think that the development of additional housing units coming online will hopefully, will most likely impact these numbers. So we'll just have to keep a close tab.
Hopefully they have children. Or they chose
I've just
Bayshore.
noticed in the past, it's been hard to get those details. It's very reactionary. It's basically, we don't find out until they show up at our doorstep. It would be great to actually be able to prepare better. But that would require, I guess, partnering with some other entities to give us that information.
That would be Mid-Pid, the housing.
I wasn't going to name names.
Yeah, well, they're there now, and they will be move-ins in November. So now's a good time to do outreach.
So I did mention in my weekly letter, I think last week, an updated report that Mid-Penn has provided and their intention to come to a board meeting in January. There were, I thought, some helpful statistics in that update. So that is one result of connections that have been made.
Yeah, this community is growing rapidly. There's other projects that are pending that are still in the planning stage. I'm sure some of you seen up on Carter. There's a huge development of townhouses that are going to be built eventually. On Santos in Geneva, there are going to be a 7-story unit of 300 unit, 7 stories. So in due time, as you can see, that this community is shaping over. And eventually there's a Martin Carter project. If some of you may be familiar with the Geneva Drive-In, there's going to be a huge development that's happening there. So the thing is, where are we going to put all these students? Right. So this will probably be a segue into the next item that I have on the agenda. And that will be under superintendent reports, 8A, facility planning recommendation. And I'd like to hand that back over to Superintendent Gill.
Nice transition, President Avalana. Thank you. So I would like to make a recommendation. I had an impromptu meeting, but very informative meeting with Greg Isom. Some of you may recognize that name. He is from Isom Associates, and he has been working with our district for several years with regards to parcel tax and bond work. And in my meeting with him, I shared some of the concerns and thoughts that have come up over the last year with regard to planning for expansion. How can we put ourselves in a proactive situation so that when our community starts to expand, we're able to serve the needs of the potential families and students who move into the area. And he had recommended that perhaps it would be a good time for him to come and present to you all about how we can look at some projected ways over the upcoming years to plan and to have some funding when the need arises to go more into that expansion that we would anticipate having over the next 3 to 5 years, particularly not only with the developments that you just mentioned, President Avalana, but the continuing phase work of the Mid-Penn development. So with your permission, I'd like to invite him to our October meeting to give us an update and report and to answer any questions you have about bonds, parcel tax movement over the next few years.
Would it cost anything?
No.
Because I was going to say, let's push him back a little bit. It's premature for anything.
No, it's just an information
Okay.
Right.
presentation.
Yeah,
Why not?
I'm
Okay.
100% okay. Do my fellow trustees agree? Awesome. There you go.
Thank you very
That's the
much.
majority.
And can I go back to Mid-Penn?
Mhm.
Remember the last time that we met with, what was his name?
Andrew,
Your friend
I don't-
Andrew. Was that his
Okay.
name?
I don't recall.
yes.
So we
Andrew.
need to get back to him if that 21 units are still in
20
place.
27?
27 units
27.
for our staff.
It was it's not marked specifically for Bayshore staff. It's marked
But,
for
yes.
educators in
Yes,
Daly
and so he
City.
said that as long as, so I'm not gonna tell them that it's open to them. Our staff comes first.
Yeah.
But it is. So we're just reminding them that offer is still in place.
Right.
Right.
So that our staff will be aware of it too.
Yeah. So in the update that that was previously shared, it was just a general overview of the information, the self-reported data from all the applications that have been received. So over a 2-week period, over 1,400 applications had been received for the phase 1 development. The total district employee preference units is 27, and there were over 40 or 47 district employees stated that they were district employees, whether that be here or Jefferson Elementary, who applied. So of that, so there's twice as many people who are interested as is what's available. For total households, 1-bedroom apartments, there are 9. 2-bedroom apartments, there are 34, and 3-bedroom apartments are 4 available. And the current applicants reside either now in Daly City, San Francisco, or Colma. So the next steps that they were going to do is conduct a lottery of those 1,400 applications and then verify the information that was on the applications to start to determine who has access to these units. Their priority from November to January is moving in the current residents of Mid-Penn who have stated that they want to move into the new offering. So that's part of why the suggestion was that Abby, the Mid-Penn representative that I've been communicating with, come in January, because they'll be able to have more specific information about who's living in the units and an update on phase 2.
And I just wanted to add that the list is closed.
It's closed.
It's closed for phase 1.
Okay.
Wow.
Can I ask a quick question? And this is to anyone on the board or Superintendent Veal. Do we have a liaison with anyone within the city of Daly City? Or does Mid-Penn have a liaison with the city of Daly City? The reason I'm asking is I'm interested in finding out if an impact analysis report was done for all these developments. You know, you pointed out,
Yeah.
obviously, there's the 550 some odd units. There's the new one that's going to go up. There's a 7-story building. I'd be interested in seeing that impact analysis. And if it hasn't been done, I'd like to see it get done.
Come to the commissioner meeting, the planning commissioner meeting.
Please send me the date and time and I'll
This
be there.
October. Come to
Okay.
it. Because there are public from Bayshore that come to the meeting, you know. Not only that, with the rezoning that is
Right.
going to happen.
Yeah, because it's obviously, there's the student population issue that would be great for us to have
Who does
visibility
it?
to. And then there's also traffic safety for our students as well.
Right.
I know they have done traffic surveys in and around Bayshore community. I don't know how often they've done it, but as to what you mentioned, I think it's important that.
Well,
we
I'd like to
get
see
that.
what forecasting they're doing.
Right.
That might be a snapshot in time now, but that's not going to be applicable when
Right.
all these other units come online. So it'd be interesting to find out what they're doing.
And hopefully we can get that data too that we can share.
Yeah.
Share out. All right, thank you.
I doubt it, they even look into that. They just want these things up. The buildings to go up for people
Well,
to
I
be
figured,
able to.
I wanted to give ask the question of if one has been done.
But
and
come,
if they had-
come to the
I will.
meeting. I'll send you the date and time.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'll see you there.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next item, 8B, strategic planning work update. I'll hand this back over to Superintendent Beal.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dyson, if you could continue with the slides in my presentation. So the next slide, thank you. So this slide may look familiar to some of you who were at our back to school night. This is just a visual representation of the alignment that we are working on with regard to starting with our mission, engage, educate, and empower, as President Avalana started off the meeting highlighting, and the relationship between that and the board priorities that we worked on determining. So if you remember when the strategic planning started in the spring of last year, we started with focusing on solidifying the board priorities, and the outcome of that was determining these 3 buckets, if you will, of focus: communication and relationships, academic excellence, and patience and compassion were the highlighted areas of focus that were prioritized for all of you. And so the bottom of this is what came out of the work that was then done with the staff in different capacities, whether that was the voluntary participation after hours, a couple of nights, or the all-day staff PD, where we worked on unpacking each of these priorities and what does that look like for us here at Bayshore with regard to our work over the next few years. So the 3 buckets that came out of that conversation really echo, and hopefully you'll start to see the alignment between the mission and the board priorities and our focus. So communications and connections, curriculum and assessment, and aligned practices in social emotional learning. We're not done with this work, but we are at a good place. And in subsequent slides, I'll show you some of the next steps that will be worked on over the next couple of months to bring more clarity and purpose to those 3 bottom buckets. But some highlights on the next slides within each of those buckets that I wanted to call your attention to. So we've only been in school for 1 month, and we are working on starting some important work in the communication and connections area. So updating our website, making it more accessible for people to get information in 2 clicks or less has been something that is an ongoing focus. Principal McZee started the year focusing on community. That was something that was that she mentioned being her priority and focus when we were talking at the end of last year about her work as a beginning principal. And I'm really pleased and impressed with the culture that she has begun to cultivate here. She started the year in her leadership by offering a community building retreat, and many of our staff members attended, and she did a great job orchestrating our groups to not only have conversation at tables, but to build a visual representation of our stories, which is a great way of getting to know each other. She has a dedicated practice of visiting our classes daily so that the students see her in the capacity as the school leader now, and building and seeing the work that's being done, that's highlighted on other slides, but seeing the work that's being done in a consistent and aligned capacity with our social emotional learning. She started the year with school assemblies. This was something that set a very, I think, effective foundation and clarifying what the expectations were for students, how we want to work with them and support them, and then how they contribute to their own learning. And so she had these assemblies for all grade levels. And then she provides some cool things like a shaved ice treat that happened right before Labor Day. But it's true and very evident that Principal McZee is leading from her heart. And I love seeing that. And I was very pleased with the turnout that we had at the back to school night. The initial presentation that happened in our gym, we didn't anticipate so many families coming. And I actually had that opportunity, as Chris mentioned, she had the opportunity to start to explain what our community schools work will look like. I also had the opportunity to give, to show that previous slide and to start building this understanding of the alignment of our work. So that was great. And then I'm excited to unveil that if all goes well, next Tuesday will be the first district newsletter that goes out to staff and community. It's a collaborative effort between myself and many of the members of our staff to provide ongoing and consistent communication. So look forward to that coming out. The intent is for it to go out the Tuesday after our board meeting, so that a section of the newsletter will highlight some of the discussions that we've had here. So that's one of the things. The next slide are some of the things that we've done with regard to the curriculum and assessment bucket. So our partnership with the San Mateo County Office of Education's assessment team, I'm really excited about. We now have established common and benchmark assessments with staff input. This is something that is aligned to a trimester assessment calendar, which gives a little bit more structure to when we are giving assessment, having conversations about what that assessment's showing us, and then how we can inform ourselves in our support of our students. We've started at the leadership level with data zone implementation. So Ms. McZee and I are having conversations with the Santa Clara County Office of Education and their data zone team to create the structure for which we will input data so that we can start to have a place where we can differentiate and unpack data that we're getting from our common and benchmark assessments. The assessment calendar is also aligned to the conversations that we're going to be having on our Wednesday professional development days. Some of the days are dedicated to PDSA cycle discussions that will focus on math, but of course, that practice is extended to other areas of our other curricular areas. And then our ELA ELD adoption committee work is ongoing. The team started meeting last spring, has done incredible work spending time receiving support from SMCOE to establish a baseline understanding of determining the priorities of what we're looking for in a resource to utilize for the instruction of our students. And then right before school started, there was a day-long work day to determine which publishers that we wanted to focus on for the pilots. And the two focused areas that determine which curricular publishers those would be are wanting to see strength in literacy development and embedded ELD support. So I was hoping to be able to have several teachers be able to participate in the pilot, but funding is limiting our ability to do that. But we will have members of our adoption team start to get training in their first in Savas publishing curriculum in October. And so I will keep you updated on that work. So lots has happened. Lots has happened, even just within the first 30 days of school. And the last highlight I want to point out are the aligned practices in social emotional development. So we did some work before school started in our pre-service days with the Caring Schools Community Curriculum team. They were here not only for training with new staff, but also our returning staff members. Some optional planning and coaching support has been offered. And what we're seeing as we're going along around each of the classrooms is some dedicated and aligned practices K-8, which was not there last year. So there's more consistency in our practice of our daily morning circles, which help to establish the community, the caring community that we want first centered in the school, in the classrooms, and then of course to extend out to the general school population. And then I wanted to highlight some leadership that we've had from a couple of our staff members. So Mr. Dyson and Mr. Patel attended a summer institute focused on restorative practices, restorative circles, and we're conducting some restorative circles today with some of our students, but have stepped up and really shown a passion and some shared leadership with regard to supporting all of our staff with our practice and understanding of restorative circles. So I look forward to that continuing this year. And then in our next steps, I wanted to highlight some things that are upcoming. So we had a study session where we were able to solidify your definition of academic excellence. And so that will start to be shared with the staff at large. More specifically, our leadership team will start to work on creating norms to support ongoing positive culture and solidifying those year 1, year 2, year 3 goals in the buckets that I mentioned earlier. And then getting an alignment amongst our staff regarding our mission and vision. This is another area that I'd like to highlight some shared leadership that I'm seeing amongst our staff members, and 2 of the members are here in the audience today. Coach Santos and Ms. Young have led 2 sessions, I believe, in our staff meetings around unpacking what does engage, educate, and empower really mean, and what does that look like in our classrooms. So I'm really proud of how people are stepping up this year and really working together to bring clarity and purpose for us all. Not that it wasn't there, but just making it visible. So some really great things are happening, and it's only been the first month of school. So I'm excited about the year.
Great, thank you for that presentation, Superintendent Veal. Does anyone have any comments? Any trustees have comments?
Congratulations to Mr. Bryan and Mr. Dyson for their restorative practices contributions. Appreciate that.
I just want to make some comments on the presentation. Again, thank you for the presentation. What I see and heard from the presentation, it's just really exciting to see in detail all the work that is being put in to benefit our students. And I think that is the one highlight I would want to see, is all the work that we're doing is for our students, to make sure that they achieve academic success, that they're safe, and that they're supported in every which way that they can. It's been a really exciting 3.5 weeks. It's not even a month yet since school has started, but it's been very rewarding to be on campus, to see all the positiveness and everyone working together to achieve that success. And we're at the beginning of the year, so I can't wait to see what happens towards the end of the year. But I just want to highlight all the information that is presented and all the information that is communicated. It's just rewarding to hear. And keep up the good work, everyone. All right. We'll go to board member reports. I'll start off at the end with Ms. Trustee Cabanero.
I just wanted to recognize the Bayshore Block Party organization team. I see all the hard work that you guys are doing in such a short amount of time. So I can't wait for the block party because I know there's a lot of new vendors and a lot of vendors coming back and a lot of performances that are going to be happening. So just excited to see all your hard work put into place. Thanks.
All right. Trustee Brown.
Well, I have a few, but I'll just start with the newest or the latest information that I received from the county. There's opportunities as far as the health of our communities. So there are opportunities to participate in a community health assessment. It's a community forum for Daly City. So I think Bayshore should be a representative in these forums. So I was just gonna pass out one or two of these. I wasn't able to make a bunch of copies, but if anybody is interested, it's September 24th, which is a Sunday, and it's from 2 p.m. to 4:30 at Crocker Masonic Lodge at 17 Hillcrest Drive in Daly City. It's in English and Spanish. And they're saying that the participating community members will be compensated for their input and time. Dinner will be provided. So there's a list of good opportunities to show up and give your opinions about what you expect or what you need in as far as health in the community and the needs that we do. Like we don't have a hospital or we don't have clinics right in this community. So, speak up, let your voices be heard. Oh, and I'm done. I have more, but
Didn't want to cut you off.
I'll be done for now.
Trustee Rudolph.
Just real quick, thank you everyone for attending in live and in person. It's great to see the numbers that have shown up. I'm very excited about, I'm going to talk about Data Zone. I'm very excited about the implementation of Data Zone. And then of course, if I'm allowed to sit and think about too long, I get these bright ideas of whether it's Data Zone or some other tool. It would be great to have some sort of dashboard mechanism for not only our goals and the implementation, but also thank you, Chris, for the presentation on community schools. It sounds amazing. And it'd be great just to have, to make sure that as a board member, it would be great to have some sort of visibility. So I know that we're going through, especially with community schools, we haven't even really started the visioning stage yet, but it'd be great to keep that in mind of like, what are the goals? How can they be measured? And then a way to track them and present them so that we can all be part of that movement. Because I think we want to celebrate our wins. And I think that's one of the easiest ways is to show that. So that's all I had.
Great, thank you. Trustee Fapua.
So like I mentioned to some of you earlier, that we had a soft opening for the Lawson Hall. It's now a home for Pacific Islands Together. So we will be having some programs there. So we would love to have you on board, Ms. Chris, so that way programs are based on the needs of the community and it's not going to be a duplication of services or programs. So looking forward to working together with you. Also, I invited everybody to come to the meeting. Come to the planning commissioner meeting that is going to happen in October in the city so that all these buildings that are going to be built up here in Daly City, and that will bring some money for us. I'd like to see the dollar amount. The libraries, they're having some few activities going there for the children and for the families. So if you go online, they have a lot of good stuff for the community and for our children and families. And thank you, staff. Thank you for all you do. I, as a board member, don't thank you enough. And but I know how it feels to be a teacher. You know, I'm a teacher myself, so I know how it feels like to walk in your shoes. So your work will not go unnoticed. So give yourself a pat on the shoulder. You're here, you're here. You've been here for a long time. So hopefully, Mr. President will end the meeting soon.
With just a few words, I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's exciting to see some of the staff here. I wish I could see all the staff here. But again, you know, we're almost in the month of school, and I'm trying to rewind to the day I was excited to be here on opening day. I got up, my daughter got up. I got up before her, but to get to the school and anticipate all the excitement again, to see all the staff on campus, to see pretty much everything going seamlessly, and to see parents back on the campus, you know, it's been kind of rewarding. But, you know, let's continue this. We look forward. We got a lot of work ahead, and we'll keep things going and keep things positive. Again, I want to thank you all. I want to thank everyone who's watching tonight for your time. And we'll adjourn this meeting at 7:45. We'll go into closed session. We'll take a 5-minute break, and
We'll be in the library.
yeah. Thank you.